There's another one that actually escaped from captivity.
Yo.
But he actually convinced his interpreter or his interrogator to help him escape because the program was trying to get him to open a portal for them, and they wanted control of it. And the guy eventually, the interrogator actually pushed him into the portal and had surreptitiously given him back to his own home world. And it ended that guy's career probably.
A portal?
Yeah.
And what kind of portal are we talking about?
You're talking like it's kind of like a way of opening a wormhole that you can control.
And did they say where this thing was accomplished and how?
I think it was also in reticuli. I think it was another being from the reticuli system.
Right, but the portal. Where's this portal? How is it accomplished?
The portal, I thought, I was trying to think. It sounded like it might have been on the Pacific Northwest or the West Coast area is where this was taking place.
And did they say how the portal was made? Was this made by them?
They had recovered parts of one, and they were trying to complete it, and they were trying to get this being to help them complete the portal so that they could use it for their advantage.
Like a Stargate.
Yeah.
Like a real Stargate.
Correct. Yeah.
He convinced his interpreter that if he didn't get back and if he didn't get home, really bad things were going to happen. And that guy just kind of felt like, hey, I got kids and whatever.
Right. I don't want society to destroy.
Right.
Plus, he had some compassion for him.
Yeah.
Because he's been working with him for a while.
Yeah. So when he got the chance, he was just like, get him in there.
I can't remember all the things. I think they had to keep this entity tied to a chair or something so he couldn't do anything. And that's why he needed the help of the guy that was the interpreter. He had to push him into the portal on the chair that he was tied to.
Yeah.
This young boy has encountered aliens visiting Earth and is now determined to figure out why they came. The answer is going to shock him. In 1979, a man named Carl is heading home from work in Wrangell, Alaska. He is driving his truck when suddenly, the truck of his friends in front of him gets lifted into the sky. Their truck falls on his, and he gets out to check up on them. Just then, he spots a UFO flying overhead, and he makes a run for it. As he is running in the jungle, he notices that the UFO is right above him. A beam comes out of the UFO, which starts lifting him off the ground and renders his body completely stiff. In the present day, a young man named Isaac Cypress arrives at a NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory where he works. He and his friend Beck are playing a little game where Beck uses NASA satellites to send out a signal, and Isaac has to find it. He finds the signal very easily, but Beck says that's not the signal he sent out. They discover that this signal has been sent out from somewhere in Canada, but it's curious because there are no registered grounded satellites there. Just for fun, Isaac sends out a copy of this signal for Beck to later find. Later at night, as Isaac is working, his computer receives a signal from an unknown source in space. It contains a lot of random code. Isaac is curious about it. Next, Isaac's therapist advises him to start keeping a video diary, so he starts taking his camera everywhere with him. One day, as Isaac is making a video diary after a hike, a meteor comes crashing down, near where he is sitting. Fighter jets arrive and sirens go off in the distance, and Isaac figures out that the entire region is about to be sealed off to the public. He hides in the bushes so that the authorities can't catch him and throw him out. He makes his way toward where the meteor crashed, and when he gets there, he spots a UFO. Isaac turns on his camera to record the UFO, but just then, it vanishes into thin air. Isaac turns around to find that an alien is standing behind him. As discreetly as possible, Isaac presses the record button on his camera. The alien stares at Isaac for a few moments and then walks away. After the alien leaves, Isaac makes a run for it, but midway through his run, he blacks out. 3 days later, he wakes up in a completely different location. He checks his camera and finds that he still has the footage of the alien, and also of himself getting lifted off the ground. There is a strange mark on his arm. Isaac comes home and sits on his bed contemplating. He looks at his TV and it disappears right in front of his eyes. He extends his hand where the TV was and finds that his hand is going through some sort of invisible barrier, as if to another dimension. He focuses a bit on the spot, and the TV returns. Isaac realizes that he is the one that caused the TV to disappear. He repeats the experiment with his camera to confirm. Isaac goes to a doctor and gets his arm x-rayed. The results show that his arm bone was fractured, but it's strange because the fracture is a perfectly straight line. It's as if someone cut his bone with a knife. Isaac arrives at work and shows Beck his ability to make objects disappear into other dimensions. However, it turns out that only Isaac can see that the objects have moved to other dimensions. Beck cannot see it. Isaac shows Beck the footage of the alien, and he is shocked. Isaac says they should show the footage to their other co-worker as well, but Beck doesn't think it's a good idea. Frustrated, Isaac arrives home and uploads the footage to an internet website with the caption, "Alien abduction footage." The next morning, Isaac is woken up by a call from a news anchor who wants to do a story on the video he has uploaded. Isaac quickly checks the video and finds that it has received almost 1 million views overnight. He checks the comments section and finds that people have mixed opinions about it. Some believe it to be real, and others claim that the footage is fake. Throughout the day, Isaac keeps getting calls from news agencies and magazines, asking him to show up for an interview. Finally, he caves and decides to show up on one news channel. During the interview, Isaac shows the footage and explains the entire story of his abduction.
When it comes to hitting your biggest goals, only one thing matters, and that's taking consistent action. But instead, we get stuck in procrastination, overwhelm.
He thinks this will help get the truth out to people, but the interviewer mocks Isaac. She says that it's a little too convenient that Isaac happened to have a camera when an alien encountered him. Over the next few days, Isaac's story spreads all over the media. Half the people support him and half claim he's faking the whole thing for attention. Over time, more and more people start believing that he's faking. Meanwhile, Isaac goes online and starts looking at articles about abduction stories. He finds that the stories of other people are very similar to his own. He finds one particular girl named Sarah and messages her to set up a meeting. Sarah and Isaac meet up, and he explains to her that alien encounters have been happening on Earth for a long time now. There are depictions of them in historical paintings, and several scientists have claimed to receive mysterious signals from space as well. Sarah asks Isaac if he knows about the alien abduction of 1979 in Wrangell, Alaska. Isaac replies that he doesn't. She tells him that a man named Carl was abducted, and after he decided to go public with the story, he went missing. Isaac decides to send copies of his footage to online websites that ask people to report abductions. As he is depositing them in the mailbox, a man named Keith arrives to help him. Keith says he is a writer, and he thinks it's unfair how the media is bashing Isaac. He says he wants to do a story where Isaac gets to explain his side in detail. Isaac thinks about Keith's offer overnight, and the next morning he decides to go through with it. He arrives at Keith's office, and Keith suggests that the best way to make Isaac's story legit is by having him take a lie detector test. Isaac agrees, and Keith shows Isaac how to put on the lie detector equipment. After Isaac answers all the questions about his abduction, and none of his answers turn out to be lies, Keith's expressions become stressed. He goes out of the office unexplained, and when Isaac follows him, he sees 2 men dressed like agents coming down the hallway. Isaac tries to run from them, but they shoot him, and he gets knocked out. Isaac wakes up and finds himself being dragged by 2 androids. The androids drag him into a white room and tie him to a chair. Outside, he sees that Sarah is also being dragged away at this facility. On a screen in front of Isaac, he is greeted by Keith, whose real name is Agent Graves. He informs Isaac that they are going to assess his level of exposure. Different objects are brought in front of Isaac, and he is told to focus on them, but nothing happens as he does. Finally, Isaac stops cooperating, and he demands to know where he and where Sarah are. Graves asks Isaac if he knows where Carl is, and Isaac lies that he doesn't know anything about Carl. Isaac then breaks out of his chair and fights off the androids to escape. As he is running away, he spots Sarah in a room, and he somehow manages to open the door using his mind. Sarah and Isaac run away as androids shoot at them. They manage to make it out of the facility, and they discover that they are currently in Costa Rica. Graves gives his men an order to follow Sarah and Isaac, as they will probably try to look for Carl and lead them to him. Isaac says that if he can just gain access to the internet, he will probably be able to find Carl, whom he desperately wants to speak to. A local woman in a restaurant directs them to go meet a man named Zed, who can get them access to the internet. The two meet Zed, who is an expert hacker and techie. Just then, the androids arrive looking for them, so they have to leave. Zed takes them to his house in the jungle, where he has an untraceable internet connection. On the way, Zed explains that the androids work for the International Space Research Program, or ISRP, which is a top-secret agency. Zed uses all his hacker skills, but is unable to find any trace of Carl on the internet or in government records. Isaac remembers the curious signal that he and Beck found going out of Canada. They hack into NASA servers and trace the origin of the curious signal. This way, they discover Carl's location, and Zed says there is a working laptop in his house that can be called. Zed makes a video call, and at first Carl rejects it, but Zed hacks into his laptop, and Isaac immediately explains his abduction story before Carl can shut the laptop down. Isaac says that he sent a copy of Carl's signal out into space and got a response the same night. Carl demands to see the response, and Isaac sends it to him. Carl decrypts the random code in the response and plays it in audio. An alien voice speaks, and it gives a time and location of arrival. They'll be coming 5 days later to the location of Carl's house. After this, Carl abruptly shuts his computer down. Isaac says they have to go to Carl's house. Sarah is hesitant, but Zed excitedly asks if he can join. Zed uses his contacts in Costa Rica and gets them a private plane to fly to Canada. Meanwhile, Graves has placed trackers in Sarah and Isaac and has been following them this whole time. After a long journey, Zed, Sarah, and Isaac arrive at Carl's place. He's suspicious of them at first, but then he welcomes them into his home. He explains that after his abduction, he was also taken by the ISRP, but he escaped and went into hiding. He has spent 20 years trying to contact the aliens again. He's worked tirelessly to create programs that translate alien codes into audio and the audio into the English language. So now when the aliens will arrive, he has a way to speak to them. Over the next 2 days, as they wait for the aliens, Sarah and Isaac spend time together around the woods and bond with each other, while Zed curiously explores Carl. On the day that the aliens are to arrive, Isaac feels the ground moving. Carl says it's because the aliens are near, and Isaac goes out into the woods to find them. Sure enough, he spots them and asks them what they want. Next, they all sit down with the aliens, with Carl's translation device turned on. The aliens say that they have completely conquered medicine, physics, technology, and all science. Now, they search for something greater. They search for the origin of the universe. Isaac asks why they are studying humans then. The aliens reply that humans have a particular aura in them that can be measured. The aliens show Isaac a vision of Jesus and ask who this man is. Isaac asks why they want to know about him. The aliens reply that he seems to be central to the origin of the universe. There is a connection between him and the aura inside humans. Sarah asks why there were marks on her and Isaac's arms. The alien pulls out a device that splits her arm clean, and a tracker comes out. The aliens place the tracker in them for their records. The aliens tell Isaac that in his world, seeing is believing. However, after all their advancements, they have learned that believing is actually seeing. Just then, Graves and his men arrive outside and demand that Carl come out. It is revealed that Graves has a personal vendetta against Carl because when Carl was abducted, the truck in front of him had Graves's father in it. Graves demands to know why his father was never found, and Carl doesn't have an answer. Graves has his men shoot Carl. Sarah rushes to check on Carl, and she is shot too. The alien tells Isaac to focus and use his senses. He does so, and the entire house is transported to a different dimension. He manages to bring everyone into the other dimension, away from Graves and his men. The aliens then use their powers to heal Sarah and Carl. They all walk right past Graves and escape in the alien UFO. 6 months later,
military personnel directly involved in the interrogation and was able to speak with several of the named individuals, family members. He also learned about a disgruntled group of military insiders associated with the infamous S4 facility at Area 51, who revealed they were behind the leaked video. Stewart concludes the tape is authentic and was leaked by an insider called Victor. John Stewart, welcome to Coast AM. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. And the last person to come on Coast to Coast to speak about this film was Victor himself. I don't know if this is a kind of pass the torch moment 30 years later, but it is overwhelming, and I am just very proud and honored to be with you and talking with you and discussing this with your listeners. And it's a long time coming. This is way overdue for someone to come out and give us some heads up. What went on with this tape, almost 25 years ago?
Okay, you describe in your own words, John, what this roughly 3-minute video shows. What do we see?
Well, we're seeing some sort of a humanoid creature, what would appear to be a gray alien, and that was one of the first things that captivated me about this video, was that why is a gray alien brown or terracotta, or people call it peanut butter color, or tan? Why does this gray alien, which should have almond eyes, right? That's been in the literature, the eyewitnesses, the abductees, military personnel from the start of Roswell, almond eyes, and this being has round eyes. And right away, just, having a foothold in entertainment, I said to myself, well, as I was watching this on TV in 97, like so many other people, this is a really bad depiction of a gray alien interview, because it's not a gray alien. It's something that I've never heard described, and I was pretty current and well read on gray alien beings from all the stories and documentaries and whatnot. And I said, this can't be this bad of a hoax. Why would you put a gray alien? Again, that just doesn't match the description of one. And so I thought, you're dissuading people and throwing them off the fact that this is authentic. Richard, like so many other people that have come to me in the past 20 years about this, the minute I saw it, to me, the hair stood on the back of my neck. It just grabbed me. It didn't have a fake feel. It didn't have that it was produced. You don't have people in the foreshadow obscuring the camera view at times, as we see the two men in the viewing gallery where their shoulders appear. The medics come in wearing short sleeve scrubs instead of biohazard containment suits.
If you were staging this, you wouldn't have people in the foreground obstructing the view of the camera. You would have it properly lit. You would want to increase the drama by having people in hazmat suits, and you'll explain why they weren't needed. It doesn't, to you, upon your initial viewing of it, feel like it's staged. Talk to me a little bit about the medical equipment that appears to be on the table in front of this entity.
Yeah, that was actually the thrust of my investigation at the start of COVID, when I tell people that I put the pedal to the metal, which was the last 5 years of my life, in, investigating this, and I really did the hard, thrust into the breach, so to speak, of the veracity of this video. I started with the monitor, and there's this bizarre physiological monitor. We think, again, I want to be honest about everything here. We still know 100% what exactly that device was doing. It is a device. It is obviously electronic. It was a blip, and the blip was green, but it had a white hue to it. It was thicker than what you would see on a physiological monitor or a heart monitor in the hospital, so to speak. And I really thought that this was strange. And the blip went up and down. It did not cross the horizontal path of the screen. It just managed to stay in its place.
So it wasn't necessarily measuring a heart rate. There are electrodes attached from this device to the entity.
We're told that, as bizarre as this sounds, the best guess we have had right now on this, Richard, is that it was absorbing a vibratory energy from this being, and that is what it was basically trying to translate into an electronic blip, and that it didn't need to go horizontally across the screen because it wasn't actually monitoring, for lack of a better word, and the infraction or injection of blood going in and out of the heart. It was measuring an electronic disturbance. So, trying to be a credible researcher and investigator, I found two major companies that back in the late 80s and 90s made medical monitoring devices, and that was Space Labs and Hewlett-Packard. So I emailed and called both companies. One, I got a response from Hewlett-Packard that said, we've never, I sent them the clip of just the monitor. Hewlett-Packard said, we've never seen this. This is not manufactured. We have no idea what this is. I get Space Labs, which is the place that made monitors for NASA. I think a pretty good company to call.
That's a good place to start, yeah.
And I get the medical device engineering department. And Richard, my right hand to God, I asked for, is there an old crusty guy in the back who's been there forever? The young man on the phone said, oh, yeah, 1 second, I can connect you. I said, I can't believe this is happening. I get this older guy on the phone, a little grumpy, and I tell him what's going on. I send him the clip. He has me call him back in 5 minutes. He said, kid, I don't know what you're looking at here. He goes, I've never seen anything like this before in my life. I said, wait, you've been with Space Labs doing monitors for 40 years. You've never seen this on a drawing board. You've never heard the conception of this type of medical monitoring device at a trade show amongst all of your colleagues. He said, no, I have never, ever seen, and remember, at this point, we just think it was a pane of glass with two brackets. It's very important here. And he said, but I'll tell you one thing. It could be a one of. Okay, what is a one of? And he said, well, in any kind of scientific application or any situation where there is nothing to help you figure out what you are doing. Let's just say I give the example, I'm looking for gold in 1890, and we create a device that helps us detect gold under the ground. You would create a one-of device to help you do that. And he said, this might be this. And he said, and you said this is from a government facility. I said, yes, it's from an underground government facility shot in 1991. He said, I think this is real. This is what you're looking at, that they made this specifically. He does not see the alien in the video because I cropped the alien out of the video.
Why did you do that?
Because I did not want to compromise his thought process on what this device could be. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Sure. It's like if you were trying to test Elvis's DNA and you're trying to determine whether he was still alive. You're not going to label the test tube Elvis's DNA. You just want them, the people testing it, to be, uncompromised and totally unbiased.
Exactly. Folks, you are just going to hear the unvarnished stories that happened to me. This is the crux of the whole investigation, are these stories, not so much the video. So he said, I think you're looking at a one-of, and the government is infamous for making one-of devices.
And who would make the one-of device? Do they have a go-to contractor that would make a one-off device?
That's a great question. This is just conjecture, and this is, water cooler talk from military insiders. The voluminous amount of them that have contacted me in the past 5 years since I've been going on podcasts and making this public is, yes, there actually is departments within these projects and these unacknowledged special access projects where, yes, you have an R&D division, so to speak, of people and even organizations at time that will take the problem and then create something to solve that problem. So yes, Richard, there are people designated exactly to do that, and I'm assuming that's what happened down in S4 in regards to this, or even somewhere else before where these beings were held, like Los Alamos.
Was he able to offer any speculation as to what this, let's call it a medical diagnostic or a medical device, what it was measuring?
No, he did not, Glee. I asked him, I said, look, supposedly this was monitoring a off-planet being. Can I ask you a question, sir? If you had an off-planet being, would you have to create a one-of device to monitor whatever kind of, and I told him that it might have a different lung sac, one organ, instead of just a regular heart, like a human. Would you need to create a one-of device like this? He didn't hang up. He didn't laugh. He didn't holler at me. He, very matter of fact, said, that's exactly what I would do because it's not a human heart. How do you know what an alien heart, or heart, as you said, lung organ would operate? So, yeah, you'd have to make something special.
Yeah, he didn't hang up. He didn't laugh. It's like, this isn't my first rodeo. He's a former pro wrestler, former gubernatorial candidate, not named Jesse Ventura. His name is John Stewart, and for the last 6 years, really, in earnest, he has been investigating the alien interview somewhere below Area 51 in 1991. It came into the hands of someone identified as Victor, who took it to a film production company, Area 51, the alien interview. Victor appeared on this very program in 1997 with the late, great Art Bell. And many people have dismissed it as a hoax, particularly after the alien autopsy video came out. It's like, oh, here we go again. So, John, let me get back to the actual entity that, despite not having almond-shaped eyes and having more of a kind of a brownish or tan color, is still being described sort of as a gray alien. Did you have the actual alien subjected to analysis for, I don't know, by special effects people to make sure it wasn't just somebody wearing a suit or some sort of animatronic device?
That's exactly what I was going to tell people next. And something that I think we get across before our interview ends, Richard, is that I want people to know that I am probably one of the few ufologist investigators that literally runs towards the skeptics, befriending especially special effects people that do not believe that this is real. I have befriended these people, emails, phone calls, hey, Mr. Stewart, we wish you Merry Christmas, and vice versa, because that is the only way for me to find the truth of this video, is to embrace all sides of the viewpoint of this video, if that makes sense. So I want people out there, again, one last time, I run towards the skeptics. So I start contacting special effects people. And I'm not going to go through a whole litany, but let's just end the monitor discussion. I get a hold of a gentleman, Alan Levine, special effects person. He was investigator with AARO, nice man, great investigator, could talk, in terms of themes that I can understand. I'm not too bright. Again, so let's tell your viewers what the skeptics say about the monitor. So Alan Levine goes, yes, you called 3 PhD fellows, and the experts who are doing their thesis on the history of monitors have never seen it, and Space Labs have never seen it, and Hewlett-Packard has never seen it. Alan Levine tells me, do you know why? Because it's not a real device. He said, yeah, it's set dressing. Let's put something in there to make it look like it's a medical procedure or something, medically happening with this being. I could have done it with 2 panes of glass, and I would have stuck an LED light and somebody with a servo offset bouncing the light up and down. And, yeah, nobody knows about this because it's not a real device. Okay. I mean, that's
Case closed? Case closed, right?
Absolutely. And again, I want your viewers to walk away and go, hey, this guy gave us all sides, which I hate when people don't do that in documentaries or people like myself. So let me go one step further before we close the monitor. We do experiments with lasers and whatnot, and it doesn't look right. Now I contact Jaime Maussan. He's been in the news with the Nazca mummies. He said, John, when this video came out, I took the video to not 5, not 10, 13 thoracic surgeons, emergency room doctors, heart surgeons. He said, John, not one of them, all of them said that the blip, even though it's not a typical monitoring the infraction rate of a heart, that this blip looks like it's monitoring a single ventricle organ, heart organ, that is in cardiac distress. He said, all 13 of these doctors said the same thing. Sean David Morton, who recently passed, God rest his soul, said he took this to 2 paramedics who are looking at these monitors constantly. And the one paramedic said the heart monitor was coinciding with the being's coughing in distress. And the paramedic, along with the doctors from Jaime Maussan, said, I don't know how you could coordinate that, the monitor with the beans coughing. Alan Levine says, well, every time the puppeteer, let's say, moved the bean, the guy would press the servo and cause the blip to go up and down, giving you both sides. And I hope your viewers appreciate that. So now, I find Bill Mums, because we're going to get to the alien now, who did the Patterson-Gimlin high-tech, frame-by-frame evaluation of the Patterson-Gimlin film for Monster Quest and Nat Geo, National Geographic. I figured if he was good enough for National Geographic, he's probably going to be good enough for John.
You went
from Chicago.
you went right to the top. Yeah.
And my wife is sitting next to me right now, and she'll chuckle at this. I write Bill a sizable check, and my wife gave me the eyes like, it's COVID. What are you doing with this very substantial check? And I said, hey, look, this guy is going to analyze the video. It's make or break time. And folks, you don't own anything until it costs you, metaphorically or literally. Now I'm into this video personally, monetarily. So Bill Mums comes back after about a week and a half. He said, John, we don't have the alien in formaldehyde, in a container. We don't have the puppet anywhere. It hasn't surfaced in 25 years. I, of course, can't tell you yes or no at this point that I haven't seen in 40 years of animatronics and puppets. He said, John, when you are making a foam or a latex puppet, about 75% of the way of the drying process, when that happens, for the past 40 years, every doll, animatronic doll, has creases by the armpits. And he sends me 20 pictures from like the 1950s until 2 days prior to him having the conversation of showing creases in the armpits of every kind of doll you've seen, puppet, animatronic creature you've seen on movies. He said, here's the kicker. Your being does not have creases by the armpits. You talk about a guy for 40 years in special effects. He goes, and it's a head scratcher. I can't tell you why that happened. I don't know how this was done where the being does not have creases in the armpits. And that even stopped a lot of the special effects guys in their tracks where they were like kind of falling on their words, like, trying to explain it too. And so, it was putting basically the cat back amongst the pigeons, like, we've got an expert saying I can't conclusively denounce this tape. So at this point, I followed a lead and it went to Havana, Cuba, and I spoke to a retired representative of the Catholic faith. He's dying of Parkinson's disease, very old man. And I showed him the video, and I'm only bringing this up because he seemed too familiar with what he was looking at. But he looked at me, and he said, if you can prove that this video is real, unless we have a videotape of Jesus with the crucifixion or Moses parting the Red Sea, and he was saying this in broken Spanish, if you can prove this providence and that this is real, he said, my friend, you are. And he touched my arm. He had a crucifix wrapped up in his hand that was shaking. And he said, you hold the greatest historical document in human history. So, this was starting to become a little overwhelming to me, like possibly this could be, you're talking about King Tut's doom. You're talking about something on the level of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
I want to ask, can you just back up a little bit and talk a little bit about Victor, how this mysterious figure claims he came into possession of this video, just so that we can sort of look at the providence of it?
Victor claims on the documentary in 96, came out in 97, Victor claims that there was a drop in security procedures or security levels to do a wholesale transfer of video or film video to digital storage. He kind of glosses over that. So knowing now, and I don't want to jump forward, but I guess it's okay, that kind of puts Victor in the photo lab of Area 51. They didn't have photo processing or the image processing that we later found out because of a Defense Intelligence report. That all happened at what's called the photo lab at Groom Lake. So this is how he claimed that the film was basically smuggled out. But he dances on it. He fumbles on it. He trips on it. And one of the first things that I said in 97, I'm like, he's lying. Not lying like, complete, utter BS. He is trying to not compromise himself. And
Right. He's not being deceptive about the content in the footage. He's being deceptive about how he came into possession of it.
Right. And we find out later that you're not taking a paperclip out of S4. You're weighed in the nude going in. Yes, folks, you stand in front of a medical doctor in the nude. You're weighed. The contents of what you ate that day are weighed, and you are weighed going out in the nude. You're not sticking a thumb drive in the crevice of your buttocks. You're not putting a CD-ROM anywhere. That they don't have the facility to do that. And when I found out that Victor did indeed, basically lie in '97, I thought, well, I'm going to follow some of my gut instincts because I felt that way back in '97. And we've come to find out that Victor was not the one that removed this from the Groom Lake area. Again, was he taking heat for somebody else? Was he taking the focus off of somebody else? Of course he was. The hero of this, and I'm not jumping forward, but the hero of this film is a U.S. Air Force cameraman. He is the perpetrator of all of this, and he did it at the Groom Lake Photo Lab. Now, I would have called this the Area 51 Audiovisual Department, but no, it was simply, and I'll go into the report, a United States Air Force cameraman, who we have not identified, was the one that made 2 copies. This was not VHS. Well, Victor doesn't even say what type of format it was shot on. There are people out there that say VHS, and there might have been a VH camera in there because we have the aid on like a handheld Sony cam that attached to something else. We actually got that image through frame-by-frame analysis, but it was the U.S. Air Force cameraman that made 2 copies of the 16-millimeter film at the Groom Lake Photo Lab, and the 3-minute film partial was snuck out.
John Stewart is with us. He's investigating the alien interview purportedly recorded in 1991 on videotape in some underground military facility. It portrays the interrogation of what some are describing as a gray alien. Alien goes into some kind of medical distress, and wide speculation about this video since it was basically incorporated into a documentary film back in 1997. The man who supposedly leaked the video, the mysterious figure investigation to try and determine whether this video of an alleged alien interrogation is the real deal. So, John, I want to get into the individuals that are in the video that you attempted to identify. Let's begin there. And how did you start that, by the way?
I knew that UFO researchers, oftentimes when they went public, would receive material, information, phone calls, letters from people inside these programs. There's numerous cases of that. So I started to take this investigation onto podcasts, and I went on a pretty popular alternative website radio show. A day before that, all of my read but not deleted emails were swiped off my iPhone on 4 different email platforms. Oh, yes, this is the crux of the story. So, tell the investigation, which is just ends at the monitor. I had no other part of my investigation completed. And again, trying to be pithy and so about 3 weeks after going on this program, I started to get an email from a gentleman. He got some things right, he got some things wrong. You seem very sincere, and I'll never forget this line. He said he was insider, he knew about this program, not about the tape, about the program. And he said, I'll never forget this line, if I could nudge your investigation, give it a nudge, I will.
Did he have a name for the program, John?
Yes. The name of this program, unofficially amongst the known, if we were sitting at a cafeteria in S4, this is called the Alien Interrogation and Retention Program, meaning the housing of the aliens and the interrogation, basically, which is really a thought projection interview of these beings. And I guess I'm not getting forward. And this is under the Majestic program, which was the name, folks, take this to the bank. Since 1947, there was the majority 12 that were picked to disseminate all the alien information and phenomenon and contact. But the overall umbrella program since 1947 was called Majestic. Take that to the bank. The security code that would have to be stamped on corresponding inter-memos and whatnot was MAJIC, M-A-J-I-C, Military Assessment of the Joint Intelligence Committee. Take that to the bank. There was many projects. One of them, Zodiac. Zodiac, I was told, was to decipher what the hieroglyphic writings were on some of these craft. This project fell under Project Aquarius. And Project Aquarius, for a layman's definition, as I can give it to you, the contact of extraterrestrial and interdimensional, very important. David Grush actually coughed on this when he was testifying to Congress. Interplanetary, interdimensional beings in contact with Earth, and specifically the United States government.
Okay, so this individual that reached out to you after you appeared on this radio program via email was confirming all these things to you?
Well, this is how he did it. So, on my birthday, coincidentally, now I'm a public figure, but I'm not a famous person. You could find my birthday on the internet if you wanted to. After 9 months, Richard, of once-a-month contact, I get a phone call, unknown, on my cell phone. Check your email. This was on my birthday. And I opened up my email, and one of the emails was from the horse's mouth. And I fumble on this, so let me be very specific. He sent me an email that he received from somebody in the Defense Intelligence Agency, which we have learned really runs the extraterrestrial program in conjunction with the Department of Naval Intelligence and the CIA, but the DIA runs it out at Papoose Lake, south of Area 51. He forwarded me an email that was sent to him by someone in the Defense Intelligence Agency. Again, I did not look at an actual classified memo. It was retyped, if I'm explaining this correctly.
Got it.
Yes. Probably to avoid me getting in trouble and them getting in trouble. A retyped internal memo of the DIA investigating this theft by Victor and this small cabal. And it wasn't called a theft, Richard. It was weird. They classified it as an unauthorized viewing, meaning like the public viewed this and it was unauthorized release. And
Right.
let me just really quickly go over the internal investigation that was retranscribed and then sent to me. Victor was not correct. The film that you are seeing was April 22nd, 1991, 3:15 in the afternoon. The Department of Naval Intelligence was conducting this segment of the interview. I find out that when they do this once a month with a being, there is like a conga line outside the interview suite of different three-letter agencies ready to go in to insert their set of questions. As bizarre as that sounds, the DNI was the last agency to get its questions inserted to the being.
Right. It's also confirmation the DNI exists, right? Because for so long we've been told it doesn't exist.
Exactly. I can't do any more than what I have done as far as confirming it. So the memo says that this gray being was an other gray, a haploid. Later find out a haploid is a biological being that only has one sexual chromosome. Human beings are diploid. Called it another gray from the Tau Ceti star system or the Tau Ceti planet in the star system reticulum. I've looked and that bears out. And then it says how the film was smuggled out. Because I always said, Victor is lying. There is no way you're taking anything from S4. And it was like the movie, I think it's called Ocean's 11, where the money was let out of the casino by a Brinks truck. It simply said, when the interview concluded, a United States Air Force police officer escorted the United States Air Force cameraman from S2 Alpha, not S4, okay, from S2 Alpha back to the Area 51, to the Groom Lake Photo Lab, which would be in Area 51. 3 days later, a digital overlay graphics was added to the film. That's the DNI/27. And Richard, we have to get to 27 before our interview's over. That is the bombshell. 3 days later, 2 copies were made. The second copy was 3 minutes long. This is what was smuggled out of Area 51, actually Area 51, not Papoose Lake. people think, oh, well, you can't get anything out of Area 51. Richard, I've interviewed a multitude of people that worked at Area 51, from truck drivers to people that for Lockheed that did radar application. The security in Area 51 is U.S. Air Force personnel. Many times you've known these people for a long time. Some days they checked your purse. Some days they didn't. Some days they made you empty your pockets on the way in. They didn't make you do it on the way out. And this has been verified by a multitude of people. And this was how the film was actually taken off the base. And it had said it specifically in the DIA report that the film was put in a GSA burn bag. I don't even know what GSA was at the time. It's Government Services Administration. They do everything a lot for the government, maintenance. They auction cars off for drug seizures. I mean, they do a multitude of.
I mean, the detail here is incredible.
Incredible, absolutely incredible. My hand was shaking. I was in a Oasis parking lot. In the Chicago area, we have like gas stations off the highway, and my hand was shaking. And so the GSA burn bag. That's how it was removed off of Area 51. Then later collected after. It gave the name of a person that said this person helped Victor sell this film to a third party, obviously Rocket. And then it says, after the Rocket production, that Victor gave the footage and a dossier, a packet of autopsy photos and memos and reports that said that on the cover said the United States government's investigation into extraterrestrial life. This was all handed, believe it or not, to a very familiar person, Wendell Stevens. And Wendell Stevens died before I found out this information. And we later find out that the FBI raided Bob Dean's bank vault in Paradise Valley, Arizona, because they thought Wendell Stevens had given the 3-minute film to Bob Dean and he put it in his bank vault. I FOIA'd the FBI. They never said that the raid didn't happen. They just said they couldn't give me any information about this because I wasn't Bob Dean.
Okay, Wendell Stevens, as in retired U.S. Air Force pilot turned UFO investigator, Wendell Stevens.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Just want to make sure people know who we're talking about here.
Seemed to be this go-to guy for this disgruntled cabal down at S4. That's another conversation.
Why did Victor take this to Rocket Films, of all places, not to the New York Times?
Great question. Well, I took it to the New York Times, and I'll get into that. So Victor waits 5 years until he is retired, waits 5 years, brings the tape. He goes to Fox Studios. I have the executive who took the meeting at Fox with Victor. And Victor tells us on Art Bell that Fox could not guarantee his security and anonymity. And they kind of gave him the bum's rush. And you could tell this in Victor's inflection that he was humiliated, basically. He walks out of Fox. He goes over to a newsstand it's called Topanga Boulevard, right across from Fox Studios. He opens up a Variety magazine. And he sees like a Chevy Chase Rodney Dangerfield golf funny comedic VHS tape for sale by Rocket Pictures in Beverly Hills. He calls up Rocket Pictures, figuring maybe a second-tier, video production company could guarantee my anonymity, and they would take me more seriously than what Fox Studios did. And Jeff Broadstreet of Rocket Pictures, here gets this phone call, says, "Yeah, come on in." And Jeff Broadstreet tells me the story that Victor did not drive at the time, took a taxi cab to the studio. He appeared off-grid. Jeff used those kind of words. He produced a tattered Social Security card to prove his identity. They watched the film. They brought in Sean Morton to look at the film. 2-3 months later, Victor appears on camera, and they start the production and the documentary. This is how, as weird of a story as the film is, this is the provenance of how Victor arrived at the offices. And let me just quickly say, Tom Coleman, who I've spoken with for the past 3 years, and Jeff Broadstreet, who I've emailed and had deals with the past 3 years, have both said and are emphatic, we did not make that film. And I hear from a military intelligence person, there's one thing I remember. That director of that documentary, he did a 2-week deep dive on proving or finding out who Victor really was. And I asked people, if Victor was an actor, as everyone tells me, it's It's a puppet alien. Victor was an actor reading the script. If Victor was an actor, folks, why would the director of this video production spend 2 weeks vetting him? I mean, if it's an actor, you hired him from Central Casting or a casting agency. Why are you investigating an alleged actor if you know he's an actor to make sure that he did work for the government? I found that very interesting. So this is how Victor ended up at the Rocket Pictures and how this videotape was eventually produced and came out.
I want to get to the personnel that you were able to track down their identities, either them personally or their family members. But let's get to this before we forget, and that is there was an overlay on the copy of the video at the bottom. It's a code DNI. We can assume is Department of Naval Intelligence.
Right.
Then there's the number 27. What's the significance?
Can I just take 3 seconds? I just got an email from somebody that works for Hewlett-Packard's spin-off company, telling me that it's very possible, I'm quoting, the device was made by Hewlett-Packard. We made one-off production runs for the DoD. It was not common, and it was not commonly advertised to known to other members of the organization. So I don't know if this ever happened on Coast to Coast where someone is helping out the investigator, but like I tell
that's the power of Coast to Coast. This platform is huge. You never know who's listening.
God bless you, Mark, with the C. Thank you so much for that email. Okay.
First of all, before we do that, there may be others listening, and what is your email?
Yes, it's got a weird spelling. It's John Allen Stewart at AOL.com, but it's spelled Jon without the H. My middle name Allen, ALAN. And my last name, Stewart, like the comedian Jon Stewart, STEWART. And I'm an old guy, so I still use AOL, so at AOL.com. And please, anyone that's ever, if you have any further information for me, it's greatly appreciated. And lo and behold, I just got an email today, right now, so it was great. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
Okay, so
the DNI
27.
Department of Naval Intelligence. So Richard, you and I are hoaxing a video. Why would you and I put an acronym of a military division that can't be proved? That doesn't exist. Even back in '96, there were still the yellow pages and the white pages, and the internet started to come to fruition. Even to this day, there's no reference for the Department of Naval Intelligence. That's what Victor says the DNI stood for. I, happened to run into a naval aviator who was a teacher, and I sent him a text. He had no idea what I was doing and working on. I said, Michael, is the Department of Naval Intelligence a real department? Writes back, yes, it is. I said, how do you know this? He said, because they tried to recruit me before I went to Pensacola for Naval Aviator School. He said, yeah, John, it's the spooks for the Office of Naval Investigation or the Department of Navy. It's their, for lack of a better term, it's their CIA covert operatives. It's that for the Office of Naval Intelligence. And I was stupefied. And they said they tried to recruit me before I became a naval aviator. And I said, Michael, why can't I find it? He said, you're never going to find it. They don't have a shingle hanging out of an office building in Georgetown or Washington, D.C. or Virginia. He said, it's an agent. Again, this is critical. He said, it is an agency, so it's allowed to be buried inside the Office of Naval Intelligence and the Department of Navy. He said, you'll never find it.
So that's one. Did you get any other corroboration? That's one.
Yes. So a person from the internet sends me a conference pamphlet, an outline of the events at a military conference. I have a copy of it. What does the pamphlet say? And Richard so-and-so from the Department of Naval Intelligence is going to present so on and so forth. So we have that confirmation along with the aviator. Now I'm in a microbrewery. I'm not going to say where because I don't want to divulge him. Owned by a former CIA agent. I mean, folks, this is like it's like a movie script. And I catch him off guard. And I said, "Can I ask you a question? Is the Department of Naval Intelligence real?" And I want to be specific here, sir. I'm not talking about the Office of Naval Intelligence. And he's looking down on the ground right now. Remember, music's playing. We've got beer flowing. But is the Department of Naval Intelligence real? And he looked at me, at his hands full, and he goes, yeah, Yeah, it's real. It's an agency. I said, is it true that it's an agency within the Department of Navy? He said, yeah, it is true. Gets up, walks to his office. He owned the microbrewery. I don't see him for 10 minutes. What is this guy doing? So there's 3 confirmations. Now the 4th one. I'm doing a bus tour when I ran for Congress. I won't say his name. A former naval aviator that became a U.S. senator that is no longer living. I don't think it's too hard to find out
Right. I
who
think we
that
know.
was.
Yeah.
Before we got back on the bus tour, on a campaign stop, I said, Senator, can I ask you a quick question? Because we just took a picture together. What is the Department of Naval Intelligence? Richard, this jolly, happy senator turned to me, snapped his neck, gave me this aggressive look, and he's like, you don't need to know anything about that. Stormed off. Walked on the alternate bus. I didn't see him all weekend. A former CIA person tells me that it's real. A naval aviator tells me that it's real. I see it in a document, and I'm really proud that I think the first investigator to prove the provenance of the Department of Naval Intelligence. It is a real organization.
Okay. Now the 27.
The bombshell. Never knew what it was. Victor stumbles over it. It's a jury-rigged cataloging system. Do you think the military is going to do something haphazard as jury-rigging a cataloging system? That, Richard, on my soul, that never made sense to me when Victor said it. I'm watching a Linda Moulton Howe documentary where she's talking about the Ronald Reagan briefing on extraterrestrials from 1980. In the documentary, she is showing the briefing papers. They all have 27 on the top of the briefing papers. Remember, folks, a 23-year-old screenwriter allegedly wrote the script to this alleged alien interview hoax. Remember this, in 96. On the top of every page was 27. I call one of my military's whistleblowers. What is 27? He said, you mean Yankee White? I'm like, yeah, I'm shaking my head. I'm like, wait, what's Yankee White? He said, John, 27 is a security designation, an umbrella security designation called Yankee White. I'm like, okay, unpack that for me. He said, Yankee White is the security designation for anyone who has contact with the President of the United States. And if you didn't have any contact with the President of the United States, like you weren't on the Joint Chiefs or you weren't on his cabinet or you never were able to communicate to the President, and you didn't have the Yankee White security designation, you would have to stop watching that film. You would have to put the packet or the briefing papers away because you did not have the security designation Yankee White to view that packet. So I'm asking people, forget about the film, forget about the alien. Would a screenwriter in 1996 know what the hell Yankee White designation was and the security number attached to it, which is 27? And Richard, you'd have to put that on the film. This is what I was told by military people. So people have to know in the military or intelligence communities what security classification that you're watching. And oftentimes you'll hear somebody say, anybody without a security classification of Q must leave the room. This has been told to me numerous times. So that is why 27 was on that film. And as we get to the men in the room, which I'm going to very briefly go over, one of the men in the room, he's the only name that I have divulged openly because he's dead, was Rear Admiral William Schaefer, nicknamed Ted. He was the chief security liaison to the Chief of Staff, Colin Powell.
He was in the interrogation room.
Was there because Admiral Schaefer was a briefing liaison assistant to Colin Powell inside the Oval Office. I've proven that he's been in the Oval Office, having contact with POTUS, thus the 27 on the film. And if you're going to tell me that a 23-year-old screenwriter in 1996 figured that out, then you've got a greater imagination than I do.
And so this Rear Admiral was in the interrogation room with the alien?
The retranscribed briefing document that was sent to me put 5 men on a list. The first person was with Army intelligence. The second person was this Rear Admiral Edward Schaefer, nicknamed Ted. Richard, when I got this list and I Googled Rear Admiral Schaefer, and you see the picture on Wikipedia in his bio, he's with Colin Powell, my hand was shaking. I'm like, this is, I never even heard of this guy. And Linda Moulton Howell, who has seen this list of names, said, quote, "You have gold here, John." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because I've never heard of any of these people. And in ufology, we always see retread names." She said, "And some of these men are alive."
All right, we're looking at the interview suite at S4. It's kept dark for the comfort of the aliens. The figure who is just barely visible in the left foreground is the telepath, and behind the camera is a raked seating area for observers. Although in this case, I believe the only other person present was a military aide. The alien is seated behind a glass partition in a biocontainment area, which is maintained at biosafety level 2, the lowest designation. That's primarily for the protection of the aliens, not us. The theory is that if they were going to infect us with an alien bug, it would have happened 50 years ago. In fact, all the indications are the aliens eliminated microbial and viral life from their own ecosystem long ago. They aren't susceptible to our diseases directly, but it has been shown that microbes can reproduce and form colonies within their respiratory systems, which tends to exacerbate the debilities they seem to suffer anyway in our environment. In fact, you can see here the alien is beginning to flag. The interview was not going well. The telepath was trying to clarify some points from a previous interview, but he wasn't receiving coherent responses. As you can see, the being is in real distress. At this point, the telepath is sending out a message to the medical staff. He's trying to communicate with the alien, but he's getting no response. There's very little he can do. There's no direct connection between his space and the biocontainment area. That's the aide stepping in on the right. The medical staff should be there by now. They're slow in responding. There they are. I have to say the medical personnel at S4 are less than first rate. They tend to be selected for their willingness to keep secrets rather than their medical competence. By the way, he's not shining that light into the eyes. It looks that way, but in fact he's checking for hemorrhaging around the eye sockets and in the nasal cavity. I'm sorry. It's very hard for me to watch this.
State point of origin? Okay, yesterday you told us you traveled, and I quote, thousands of light years to get here. Yes. Tell us the truth, or the word, or another reason. It is truth. I thought it off. Full of future. Travel, time, travel, space. All such special devotions. So I take it aliens took over our future, right? No. So you're human. Okay, so you evolved from us. Yes. So what are you doing here now? Observe. How? Okay, so how about we concentrate on your time? Try me. Wait, so you know the meaning of life? What's the difference? you know how the universe is created? Yes. So you think God? Okay, illuminate us. What happens when we die? Okay, so let me get this straight. There's no death, and we all experience each other's lives, right? Okay, so how was the universe created, and why is it so perfectly made for us? Moving on. Okay, so why do we destroy ourselves with nuclear war? Can you be more specific, please? Okay, one last thing. What about morality? What are you basing your morality on? I see. Okay, that's it. Thank you.